The many looks of Boy George have startled British and American audiences alike, but his music has topped the charts all over the world.
There's only one thing that this world has got too many of. And that's cynical people. It's a song you'll probably remember us by more than anything else. And it goes like this.
Boy George's public personality has made his group, Culture Club, one of England's most famous exports since the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Last year, they won a Grammy as Best New Artist, and for the ever-colorful, ever-controversial George, a simple thank you wouldn't do.
Culture Club.
Thank you, America. You've got taste, style, and you know a good drag queen when you see one.
Born George O'Dowd in a middle-class neighborhood outside London, he is one of 6 children, the son of a construction worker. At school, George didn't do his homework and was placed in a program for problem children. He was eventually expelled at the age of 15. And for the next 5 years, George joined London's street culture, going to clubs and dressing outrageously. When we went to London to visit George, he took us to his old haunts along King's Road.
Barbara just bought herself some nice clothes.
Yes, I did. A few little
It was the old haunts, but the new George. Short hair, no makeup. He brought along his friends, Philip and Paul. Paul is the one who looks like Paula.
I don't do that. I don't go to Bloomingdale's in New York like this, believe me.
No. Imagine what would happen. These jackets are great, but the shoulders are cut really funny, so like when you can't pad them, because I only buy things that I can pad.
Ah, no,
I like big shoulders, you know.
It's nice to have something named after you.
And this pub here used to be like a really big punk pub. It's where they used to have all the bands playing. It used to be, I mean, it's much classier than it was.
But is punk still a big thing here? It's sort of past, hasn't it?
No, it's still a big thing. It is in suburbia. You know, it's like, punk is like normal now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So if punk is normal, what's new?
No, but they're not aggressive
People
anymore.
like Philip, sort of freaks, you know. This is an English policeman.
Hello.
They like all that
Remember
American
pictures?
What are you filming for?
You know who he is?
No, I don't.
You don't?
Margaret Thatcher, you know.
You don't think it looks like Margaret Thatcher? Do you have any idea?
Yes, I have actually. Yeah.
Because he
Now
knows
that
he's
you're
being
looking at
clever.
it? Who do you think it is?
Boy George.
Ah.
At night, George took us to his favorite club, the Mud Club, on Charing Cross Road.
What are you saying?
Your new hairstyle.
Thanks, Butch, isn't it?
Very nice.
I think I look more like a man now.
It's a private club for the uniquely dressed, and George introduced us to some of his friends.
Debbie. Barbara Walters.
Hi, Barbara. Nice to meet you. I hear. Who did you interview last? Someone told me Prince Charles or something. Was that the last?
I interviewed Prince Charles.
Yeah, you have, haven't you?
Yes, it's only been a
New one now. I think you'll get better ratings, don't you?
George has 2 houses in London, a small one which is filled with his collection of Boy George dolls, crucifixes, and oriental masks. His bedroom, which is filled with stuffed animals and pillows, looks like a teenage girl's room.
Okay, Barbara, I'll take you past my many claims to fame.
Not bad, all this platinum.
And this room is my clothes pit, which is basically where I keep everything.
Where are the wigs?
In the bag. This is actually a conventional rubbish bag. And you have every colour you want.
Let's try.
Me?
Yeah,
Or you?
come on.
No.
And the black like
And
the
this
derby.
black hat, yeah, and my plaits.
Let's see, because that was the look that we first saw.
That's where that hat's
Yeah,
from.
I remember that.
Success is more apparent in his other house. It is a large Victorian once owned by comedian Monty Feldman, which Boy George is renovating. The house and its owner have changing faces. He is 23 years old, and he prefers to be called just plain George.
George, it's a new look. The short hair, your hair. I mean, when we went around town, you didn't even have it sprayed the way you do today. Why? Why change the whole image now?
The thing is, I don't think of it as an image. It's impossible to explain to people, but what happened to me 2 years ago is that I became Boy George. I mean, I've always been George. I've always been outrageous, you know, for want of a better word. Yeah. And I suddenly became Boy George. I got up in the morning, I put on my hat. I became what people wanted to see. And it was very depressing for me because I am actually an extrovert person. And years before that, I'd gone around dressing up. And suddenly I was doing it for other people. And so now I'm back to my old self again. You know, when I want to cut my hair, I cut my hair. When I want to wear a wig, I wear a wig. And I think that if you are pleasing yourself, it does look better. You know, I did get very sort of depressed with that look, and I felt like, I almost felt like a doll.
But are you comfortable enough now with you so that you wouldn't have to wear the makeup at all?
I wear it because I want to.
Yeah.
You know, so many people say to me, oh, your gimmick. I haven't got a gimmick. My gimmick is my personality, you know.
Why did you start in the first place? Because you did it, as you said, long before it was fashionable, long before you ever thought that you were going to sing or be a star. Why? Tell me about that little kid who said one day...
It was basically, I think, when I was at school, I found the whole environment that I was in very boring. And I realized that there wasn't really any way that you could say to people, look at me. You know, there was no way of, unless you sort of like were violent or aggressive, there was no way of being heard. And it was my way, I suppose, of getting attention in the beginning. But eventually it became something that I really enjoyed. And it is no longer something I do for attention.
How old were you?
At 13.
I heard your mother used to take you to church and you wore the big platform shoes and the floppy hats.
Yeah.
Good heavens, what did the priests think?
I think they were grateful people came, because in those days it started to really deteriorate, you know. I mean, as a kid I went to Sunday school, like a religious school, every Sunday for years. So the priest was grateful to have me there. It's like, who can forget his shoes?
What kind of a kid were you?
Oh, when I was very young, it was a case of little boys should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
I mean, my father was very strict in the sense that, you know, when he came home from work, he wanted silence. He didn't want, you know, he had 6 kids who made a lot of noise. And he would always say to us, you know, this is my time. I've worked hard, be quiet. So for a long time as a kid, I never really sort of, I used to stay out of the house a lot, you know, and I was very quiet as a kid, you know, very quiet.
I had heard that when you were a little kid, you said, all I wanted to do was have my father love me.
What I meant by that was that I wanted my father to stop trying to be a macho man. My father's a very, very intelligent guy, and what he used to do was like cover that up with aggression. So he would rant and he would shout and he would smash things. And what was a very intelligent guy appeared to be a very sort of dumb guy.
And what about you and your mother?
My mother, it's funny because my mother was brought up to believe that women were second-rate citizens, that they didn't have any right to an opinion, and that they sort of obeyed the opposite sex without any question.
How did you think it should be?
I thought it should be equal, you know. I mean, my mother worked as hard as my father. She might not have been laying bricks and mortar, but she was working as hard. And I hated the attitude, you know, it just annoyed me so much.
And what were you? Were you a sensitive little kid? Were you an outcast kind of in your own
Not really.
head?
I mean, when you have like 6 kids, obviously nobody's going to get any more attention. So, you know, like you learn very quickly as a child that, you know, if you want attention, you have to find it outside.
Did you know when you were 11, 12, 13, on the brink of adolescence, that you were different, that you weren't like the other kids?
I knew that I didn't want to be like other people.
You wanted to be special?
What I'm saying is that I realized that I just didn't want to do what they wanted me to do. You know, I didn't want to obey. I mean, I was a useless pupil because really I wasn't going to learn. Once I'd learned maths, reading and writing, I started educating myself. You know, I wasn't interested in being a pupil, so I was very destructive.
And they kicked you out of school?
Eventually, yeah. And I mean, that's something I really worked on for years.
Being kicked out?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you? I mean, if everybody was saying you're a rotten kid and you're a flop and you're no good and you're not going to make it, where did you get the confidence to feel good about yourself?
I just thought to myself, if this is what they call being good, I don't want to be it. If being a man is like being aggressive and punching people and being loud-mouthed, I don't want to be one.
Okay, but then here's your mother who was subservient. Did you want to be a woman?
No, not at all.
What did you want to be?
You see, I don't believe in the stereotypes. I don't believe there is any such thing as a real man. You know, to me, a man is somebody with male organs. You know, they don't, I mean, men weren't born to drink beer and women weren't born to lay on their backs, you know. I mean, that is my opinion, and I stick firmly behind that opinion.
Did you have girlfriends? Did you feel you had to go through that?
I had girlfriends for years, I mean, all different kinds, you know. I mean, a lot of girlfriends, because at school, again, you know, because I was so different, I always pulled a lot of girls, you know.
Did you have boyfriends too, or did the guys shun you?
No, I never had boyfriends. Not
Just-
as a kid.
Yeah.
At 14, when you live in Woolwich, you do not have boyfriends. I mean, the thought does not come into your head, you know.
Then how, at 14, did you go out and what, did you buy makeup or use your mother's? How did you know?
What happened to me was that when I left home when I was about 15. I went to live in Birmingham with some friends of mine there. And that's really where I started to wear a lot of makeup.
And when you came home and you saw this father who had an image of being a macho man and this mother who was always a little frightened, don't tell me they just said, oh, hi, George, that's nice. I mean, they must have really had a fit.
They did at first. You know, they used to freak out. My mother was always like saying, oh, what would the neighbours think?
I don't blame her.
Well, I resented her for saying that.
Yeah.
Who cares what the neighbours think? I mean, really, who cares?
Yeah. What were you wearing then? What was the punk look?
Plastic bags, studs, toothbrushes hanging out of my ear. I mean, my father actually, to be quite honest with you, would just look above his paper and say,
No
say
kidding.
la vie. He really could not be bothered. I mean, my mother was the one that used to edge him on. It was like, tell him to stop doing it. And my father would say, oh, for God's sake, you know, he's not killing anyone.
Okay, so here you are, this punk kid with a lot of other punk-looking kids. At that time, you started to go to the gay bars. Was that because it was just freer and easier, or was that...
It was because there wasn't anywhere you could go without getting punched in the face. You know, I mean, there was a club called Louise's, which was in the West End, which was the place to go. I remember the first time I went there, somebody blew a kiss at me. And I remember I went with a few friends from where I lived. I was saying, that guy blew a kiss at me. I was so freaked out and absolutely so shocked. And then, like, after a while, you just think, you know, it was like, you realised it didn't matter, you know. It's only that you were brought up to believe that, you know, anybody who was sort of homosexual was like, you know, a disgusting pervert.
You have been asked in every interview about your sexual preference. Are you bisexual?
Yeah, of course I am.
Could you go as easily one way as the other? I mean, if a divine man walked in and a divine woman walked in, you wouldn't care which?
Yeah, I think Elizabeth Taylor, when she was thin and young.
You could be as happy with Elizabeth Taylor as you could with Montgomery Clift.
Probably, yeah. The middle America's having a heart attack.
What is it you want to say? What is it you wanted to say all your life? What's the statement?
I don't think there is anything that I want to say full stop.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I want to say at different times, you know. But I think that basically my attitude towards homosexuality, heterosexuality is any love is good love. You wouldn't have like all the diseases you had if people were a lot more monogamous. I mean, I definitely believe in monogamy. I think that you can have a very healthy relationship, a good relationship with one person, and I think that it is better for you. Sounds old-fashioned. I don't really care if it does, you know, but I think that it is better for you, and you get more out of it.
You know what Jerry Falwell said about you. I have the exact quote, but the gist of it is that a man who doesn't want to be like a man and a woman who doesn't want to be like a woman is against what God created.
Well, you know, I have my own set of religious values which I live by, and that is it. I mean, other people's religions don't affect me. I believe there is one God, and that God is there for people whether they're homosexual or heterosexual, black, white or yellow. God doesn't discriminate, and that's something that people don't realise. God does not discriminate.
What do you like most about yourself?
I think the fact that I'm not sort of prejudiced. I'm not prejudiced in any way.
What makes you cry?
The thing that makes me saddest is that I cannot change life for all those other Georges, people like Philip and Paul, you know, who aren't famous. I was in Hampstead the other day walking around, I went for tea, and there were a bunch of girls laughing at Philip. You know, now if they'd known who I was, it'd have been a different story. It would have been, can I have your autograph? And I hate that.